Hi, everybody. Ted Mavrey. I lead Palantier's global commercial business, and I have the distinct privilege to give you a whirlwind tour through examples of AIP in action. And I think this will probably be the easiest talk I've ever had to give because the progress is awesome. It is super exciting. It has been really exhilarating to work with you all over the last several months. I want to start by giving sort of a nod of thanks to the creativity that you all have brought to this process. You've really approached the problems with sort of the structural optimism of a civil engineer. I can build a software skyscraper, but I can do that with the rigor of the foundations have to really work. And some of you have already pushed to prod. You're already generating those unique context-driven feedback loops to get smarter and smarter over time. Some of you are just taking those first steps beyond chat, as Sham alluded to. But all of you have broken ground. And we're really thankful for that and really appreciate the trust that you've put in us to go on this journey together. So with that, let's get into it. Obviously, a lot of our journey in applying AI in high-stakes contexts has come from our experience in defense. This weekend, General Milley took CBS News through a tour of how they are supporting operations in Ukraine. You might see some familiar software in the background there. And as I was watching it, there are a couple of things that I took away from it that I thought were important, that were just resonant across all of the commercial use cases that we've learned from those defense partners. The first is that they have always had extreme demands between the synthesis of what is happening in the real physical world and what's represented with the digital tools that they use to interact with that world. And critically, at the front lines, that means understanding exactly what's happening now. But not only what's happening from a passive static map, but how can I synthesize what is most relevant? What can I alert on? What are the major movements? How can I do that in a way that allows me to collaborate across multidisciplinary functions that are managing that theater? And then also, just as importantly, working backwards from those operators. These operators need things to understand the pulsing, live view of what is happening on the battlefield today. And things like semantic search back in the rear, they might be a nice efficiency, probably valuable to understand things, but if you really want to apply them, you have to get to the front lines, as you all have. So getting into the commercial use cases, there are so many things that share that same foundation. And a lot of you all have started with just how can I push the efficient frontier of what the software can provide me to understand the operating theater that I operate in. At HCA Healthcare, as you'll see shortly, that's around how can I enable a caregiver to coordinate complex care routines across multiple providers, across thousands of patients, and invert the relationship between software as a place to do data entry versus something that is giving me operating leverage to provide better care. For American Tire distributors, the operating theater is a supply chain. How can I understand what is happening across the supply chain? What are the most relevant and important deviations? How do I allocate scarce resources to have the most optimal and efficient interventions? For the New York Stock Exchange, that theater is the markets. How can I help an issuer understand across their structured data, unstructured data, build cohorts and understand exactly what is happening to a security on a given day? This one's probably a bad one for us to have chosen to dog food, because if anybody can tell us what's happening to PLTR on any given day, that's a tall task for an LLM. At United Airlines, that's in the context of a network operations center across all of the entirety of the complexity of what's happening with my aircraft, what's happening with crews, ground delay programs, flights, weather, swaps, et cetera. And for us at Palantir, that's the entirety of our Apollo deployed fleet across all of the heterogeneous environments that we deploy our software in, and using AIP to provide our own operating leverage to get more efficient. But of course, you guys don't just understand the world. It isn't just a, can I get data to my fingertips? I need to wield the world. I impact it. I make the world happen. And so those defense partners aren't just saying what is happening, they're saying, can I generate courses of action to understand, given that operating context and given everything that I've done to prepare for this, what is the optimal thing that I might want to do? What are suggestions? How do I provide solutions in the hands of the operator? Similarly, in the healthcare context, at an HCA or a Tampa General or the Cleveland Clinic, they're using AIP to peer into the future to understand, where am I going to run into a bottleneck in my care? How can I proactively suggest and automate changes in scheduling so that I can prevent those conflicts from happening while I still have the ability to address them? At CPKC, another one that you're going to see later, it's how can I provide a dynamic interface for routers to interact with a highly dimensional, highly complex optimization model to move optimization out of the planning domain and into the operating domain and avoid costly train dwell time. At Avis, they're using it right now to say, how can I take live dynamic vehicle evaluations, part availability, the context of operators on the ground to prepare for Hurricane Lee and figure out, am I going to sell cars? Am I going to repair them? Under what cases, what strategy optimal? At Surf Air, that's managing flight contingencies. When something gets disrupted, an email, a pilot isn't available, how do I route and manage the complexity of that so I can get my passengers on those planes? We're also seeing enormous uptake sort of in the supply chain context generally. So at Molson Coors, they built an initial application to take into account structured and unstructured signals of deviation and disruption in their supply chain, synthesize the current state of the supply chain, and generate suggestions on potential remediation actions. At Fujitsu in Japan, their developers have built a general purpose application to provide supply chain disruption services to all of their customers. And we're seeing this same dynamic play out across industries as far-ranging as steel, medical supplies, and protein. We're also seeing sort of in that general supply chain context, how can I use AI to procure more efficiently? And one of the common patterns here has been, I have a complex product catalog. One, can I just cohere that? Oftentimes through acquisition across different ERPs, how can I get a sense of what is happening with my products? What are the contracts that are associated with them? Where's their potential efficiencies? But then beyond that, it's also saying, well, okay, what are the likely raw materials that are in these products? How are those raw materials linked to the volatility of index prices or commodity index prices so relevant in this period of major inflation? And then given all that, how can I generate proactive negotiation strategies in order to procure more efficiently? We're seeing this in spades in the food service industry with Aramark, who has an infinitely complex SKU catalog and needs to operate with this level of efficiency. And then this general pattern of take unstructured documentation that exists buried away in contracts, extract it, link it into the operating context so that we can operate more efficiently. We're seeing it happen at Nepesco or at Synetics or internally at Palantir so that we can make sure that we are managing and optimizing our own internal operations very efficiently. One of the sort of consistent themes across all of these different use cases is how much more complexity can I manage? And one of the things we're super excited about is another emerging pattern is sort of taking the concept of continuous integration, continuous delivery, which is sort of native to anyone building a big and complex software system, and say, well, can we extend that into the physical world? Can I have continuous integration when, if you take Lilium building their eVTOLs, I have reams and reams of requirements and unstructured information for what that eVTOL is going to be. I have all of the assembly and parts that are assembled in order to match and meet those requirements. But they're innovating all the time. Those things are changing constantly. And so managing that overhead of how do I manage that continuous integration of what's going on with the aircraft to provide more operating leverage to innovate faster and get their product to market. And the same sort of pattern we're seeing in other major infrastructure projects, whether it's in constructing major rail systems, giant plants, or even in the digital domain, where it's just focusing on things like master data management, especially in the context of, can I do material harmonization at scale, especially for very acquisitive customers or customers who are going through sort of what used to be the endless risk process of, can I consolidate an ERP, can I sunset an ERP, can that prevent me from generating the synthesis that I want or extracting the returns from M&A? Other of you have focused on instead, how can I generate more revenue with this technology? If it's going to really matter, prove it, and the easiest way to prove it is generate dollars for the bottom line. One of the really interesting patterns with this is, of course, all of those, how do you really generate more dollars? Well, you provide a better service to your customer. Right? So it isn't just about generating more efficiency, it's improving the quality and sophistication of the product. So at Sampo, in commercial underwriting, they have the challenge of, how can I triage which submissions I'm going to process? How can I accelerate the rate at which I triage those submissions and process that reams of unstructured information into the way that I understand the world? I then need to link that with the unstructured underwriting guidelines that I'm constantly iterating on to decide what are the risks that I want to take on in the portfolio. And of course, I want to do that in the context of what my portfolio actually is and what are the things that have been generated there, like accumulation risk. And we see this as sort of a ubiquitous problem in the commercial underwriting space, where many of our other insurance customers are starting to move against it. At CAS Investments, the challenge is, how do I take the white glove service that I provided to my customers as an alternative asset manager and prepare to scale that by orders of magnitude and deliver that same high-level, wonderful service, but at another levels orders of magnitude. And we're really excited to see them build that business on top of AIP for the next 5 years. At Cardinal Health, this is about providing customer success managers with the ability to understand the impact of inventory costs. How can they more efficiently suggest strategies so that they can manage their own inventory better on their behalf? And in strategic legal practices, the real challenge is around how can I discern whether a case is appropriate, and how fast can I get back to the customer so that when they're in the mode of saying, I want to process this, that they're able to be there and help them and bind that case. Those fill rates. At Concordance, similar issue. How do I manage the backlog of orders by identifying potential replacement parts or replacement goods in an industry where something that's seemingly simple as a glove might have 1,000 different SKU representations in that? And I like that those two things happen sort of back and forth together because they also reveal the nuance of a lot of things Shyam talked about of, well, how do you actually deploy something that looks the same, identify potential alternative goods, but deploy it into the right operating context? And that turns out to be very different for a picker that's walking the shelves of a grocery store versus someone that's helping a care provider manage their supply chain. At Westrock, this is about managing that process of how do I take a quote, link that up with a very complex product catalog, link that up with the underlying commodity prices that drive the cost basis of that product catalog, prevent errors and protect my margins. With New York City Health and Hospitals, sort of addressing that age-old problem in healthcare of how do I document, structure, and capture complex care routines for patients and link that up with all of the various benefit schemes and how those things link together such that I can be appropriately compensated for the care that I provide. At Renfro, it's about automating and increasing the quality of claims that they file. And at Hertz, among other use cases, managing the damages and the collections and claims on damages of vehicles. And this also extends at the very top of the funnel. How do I find customers? So bringing it back to the defense context, of course, that oftentimes is identifying this is the target. This is the thing that I need to understand. But in the commercial context, and you'll see shortly an example from Miller's Ale House of bringing that precision, dynamic, context-aware marketing at scale that's usually only been available in the pristine data gardens of the consumer internet and really moving it out into the real world. Others of you are focused on just help me make my product and experience of engaging with me better. I think a lot of people have immediately leapt to, I want to focus on customer service. It's sort of the first place you think of, well, I'm going to have a chat bot. But what you all have said is, I don't need more efficient or cheaper customer service, I need better customer service. And better customer service means linking not just the context of what's happening with the customer and that parametric knowledge of the model, but what is the state of the enterprise and how I can support that customer. So at Rubicon Waste Management, that's processing tens of thousands of inbound emails, linking that up with the state of the deliveries and the fleet in order to develop increasing automation to be able to address those issues at scale. At Yamato in Japan, similar, how can I take inbound issues, link that up with the state of my deliveries, the state of my drivers, and all of the unstructured business rules that dictate how I should deal with any issue and provide automation leverage in order to deal with those. At Kinder Morgan, that's around managing pump reliability. In the automotive industry, significant cases, you'll see later examples from J.D. Power of the quality management application that they've built across their unique scale data set to understand patterns, suggest resolutions. Super cool, you should check it out. But also for our tier 1 automotive customers using it on their own proprietary data of executing that pattern of taking a warranty claim, identifying what part is likely associated with, binning that with other potential emerging issues, collecting all of the relevant data across the value chain to help me execute that root cause analysis and providing significant operating leverage in order to do that more efficiently and make all of our cars more reliable. The last theme I want to hit that is also super exciting to me is that the users of AIP are not just in corporate offices. They are out at the front lines. They are engineers. They are people doing things in the physical world, and that's very, very motivating for us as Palantir. So at Navistar, they have engineers fixing vehicles, understand how can I have access to the telemetry of the vehicle, how can I understand the contracts that dictate what services I can provide to this vehicle, how do I have at my fingertips, given similar issues, how I resolved them previously, how do I understand where the inventory and availability of parts are so that I can provide better service to those customers. You'll see examples of this similar theme in a second here from Eaton, from Komatsu, from WestTrack, where they're managing the aging of work orders and accelerating the rate at which they can fix the vehicles that they have in front of them. At Panasonic North America, as we sort of heard earlier, sort of taking this challenge of bringing Japanese engineering into the US and really bootstrapping that expertise from the ground up, where one of the critical components of their scaling is how fast can I have a new engineer be as smart in diagnosing issues as my most experienced engineer? And how can I use AI in order to accelerate that journey? And of course, for ourselves at Palantir, overhauling our entire support infrastructure to be able to do this more efficiently and better for you all as well. Final thing that I'll talk about across all these examples is that how exciting it is for us to see the burgeoning of our partner ecosystem. And one of the things we sort of woke up and realized is that the best users and the best builders on AIP don't all work at Palantir. And that is really exhilarating for us. So Accenture has built an application in order to help utilities manage critical infrastructure in the face of climate risk. PwC has built applications to help pharmaceutical companies manage the complexity of 340B double-dip discounts. Jacobs building applications to use the entirety of their knowledge base to empower their frontline engineers to operate more quickly. Crisis 24 is using AIP to power part of their dynamic risk library to understand risk of exactly what is happening to my enterprise or the institution that I manage. Genpact has built a dynamic pricing solution. You'll see shortly what Sintra has built to make smart highways. You'll see Foundry for Builders partner Hence in the demos that they've seen in the demo expo earlier. And I think this is in general something that we are very excited about and very interested in investing heavily with AIP, with how do we bootstrap and accelerate the partner ecosystem as well as your ability to build your own software offerings on top of the product at pace early. Okay, I think I got through most of that. If I forgot any, it's not because I don't love you. I guess I just don't have an AIP-powered VR player yet to remember everything. Yet. So now let's get into how you've obviously covered a tremendous amount of ground collectively. How are you moving so quickly? And I think there are two key themes for me on that. One is, of course, the technology, but then second, and as importantly, the process that you've utilized in order to move at pace. So first on the technology, Shyam covered a lot of the underlying principles. You're going to see a lot of the demos that show why the technology is powerful. But I think one of the other important primitives that we're very focused on is how can we allow you to take the technology, add the power of the technology, and not introduce new or an unnecessary complexity into your enterprise. So it's obvious as you're thinking about these different components that you need to implement something. What we've heard from our customers is the implementation pattern that I want is something that resembles an AI mesh. So sort of take the principles of a data mesh and extend it into those tools and applications that are now necessary. And a big part of that is add that value, but make it, again, easy to adopt. And one of the product announcements we're really excited to make today is the general availability of AIP virtual tables, which allows you to now have the power of the ontology, the ability to project that data into the narrow, stateful, decision-aware context window to power these applications without copying your data. The second key thing that Dr. Karp stole a little bit of my thunder on earlier, but he gets to do that, is thinking about like what is the process for adopting this technology. And so first, a few of the different things that we've learned and really important things. The first one is the value of keyboard time. The one thing that we've learned, and we're trying to be extremely disciplined about internally, is if we're talking about an idea that's been written in a quip or is on a whiteboard or debating it, and it hasn't been implemented, tested, tried on a keyboard, we're not having a productive discussion. The types of things that you're going to learn by getting your hands on a keyboard, you're going to learn so much more quickly about how to build intuition to utilize this technology. Second kind of key theme is across all of these use cases, where is the AI providing substantial leverage? And one sort of simple mental model to think about is thinking about what they do as saying, I have a new AI teammate. What would you expect of a new teammate? They can do work, right? That work's probably not going to be perfect, but it's going to give you implicit scale. And also, that new teammate's, by doing work, going to get better and better over time. And so starting by figuring out, how do I push to production? How do I throw that new AI teammate into the deep end with the guardrails and training and support that you would of any new teammate that you're counting on, in order to get them smart, extract the value, and start to get smarter over time. And of course, that also leads into this third major theme, which is thinking about making sure that you're attacking problems that can add value today, and then have compounding ambition to get to that skyscraper level of ambition, but not sort of falling into that self-driving car trap of waiting 18 years to say, okay, well, if it can do this, if I can get to this threshold of value from the AI, then I'm going to start to adopt it, being very disciplined about how do I start to do that now. And so what all of these learnings have sort of led us to realize is that AIP requires a fundamentally different go-to-market. And probably more importantly for you all, I think it requires a fundamentally different adoption curve. The value of getting started is so important, and you will move so much more quickly if we can reduce the friction to allow you to get started. And so our primary means of going to market with AIP will be through these boot camps. They will be efficient, they will be respectful of your time, critically, and then in these boot camps, what you can expect to do is to get your hands on the keyboard, iterating, getting that keyboard time, building your intuition about how to apply AI in your operating context, and critically accelerating past that idea of chat. It's like we'll say this over and over again, but we will help you get past chat very quickly. We'll help you decomp a business process. Where are you likely to provide significant AI leverage immediately? Where is there unstructured data feeding into a structured business process? Where is your business process actually happen much more outside of your core systems than your core systems might think? Like building these sort of easy ways so we can help you fish then and deploy across these other different boot camps. And we're seeing this sort of with great effect, where people that have gone through the boot camps are then coming back with 4 or 5 use cases 2 weeks later because they've learned how to fish in doing that. And then also have a real live initial implementation of a use case and a plan to figure out how to take that MVP and get it into production. And so we're looking forward to anybody wants to do that. For all of you that are here, we have the accelerated turbocharged bootcamp. Can we get you through it in an hour this afternoon? I'm optimistic, but we'll see how far we can get. And for everybody else, really looking forward to seeing you at a bootcamp in the future. So with that, thank you, everybody. Now on to showing the real work with our customers. Thanks.